I was able to get in touch with a scientist in Germany. And he was very inspired by the work I was doing and decided to support me by providing me access to these rare ingredients. I would get the samples, I would try things out, I would end up extending shelf life of avocados to 30 days. And I was like, this is like a miracle. Why me? And why me? Why not some other big company? I like to use the term God engineering. He literally leaves clues, but you have to have that discernment to be able to see the clues. He provides everything we need to be successful towards glorifying his name.
Bold visionaries, faithful disruptors. Some call them crazy, but they are called to create. Under his power, for his glory. The Faith Driven Entrepreneur Podcast.
Welcome back to the Faith Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. There are phrases that we hear, whether it's in political cycles or cultural cycles, that we hear that resonate. And one of the things that we have heard often, at least in the States, is this idea of make America healthy again. And more than a political statement or a slogan, I think one of the things that helps us realize is something is broken. And whenever things are broken, this is where the superpower of entrepreneurs step in as problem solvers. And here we are today in Nairobi, Kenya, just getting a chance to hear how God has equipped problem solvers to look into creation, to find some of the natural ways that God has placed little clues, and we get a chance to connect those. And the wonder of that journey of knowing Him more fully, but helping people along the way. Let's get started with today's conversation.
I spent most of my life in eastern Uganda. I would work on my dad's farm, trying to learn more about agriculture. And usually around Christmas time, middlemen come to the farms to buy produce and then sell to the markets. The middlemen or traders would come to the farm and promise to buy all the produce. And so that would excite my dad, and he would harvest most of what was in the garden. You'd have over 100 bunches of bananas. It's really huge, 30 to 40 kilograms. Because of the warm and somewhat hot climate, they tend to ripen really quickly. So I'd watch my dad, have to painfully watch the bananas ripening because the traders would not show up on time. So you have all these bunches that have been harvested and they're just ripening. And most of it just went to waste because of food spoilage. So my dad was extremely devastated. Watching him go through that experience, I was like, this is something I've got to be able to do.
Ghana loses an estimated $1.9 billion per year in food loss and waste.
Sub-Saharan Africa loses about 37% of its food annually, and that costs economies about $1 trillion globally.
The town of Makueni lies in a semi-arid region. The scorching heat causes produce to rot quickly once it's peaked.
From the post-harvest process, harvesting the produce, the transportation, the heat and everything it faces, it's already facing a lot of damage coming down there. Then bringing it down here, you get to see that most of the products are already half gone.
Now, up to 76% of losses occur during post-harvest handling.
Aid agencies estimate that at least 33 million people across Nigeria are likely to face serious hunger between June and August.
And a lot of them that go to the farm are not just farming for their sake, they're also farming for the society as well.
Government has been trying to improve security in food processing areas to encourage farmers to go back to their land and grow crops.
So I studied a Bachelor's of Agriculture Science at Uganda Christian University. And while I was there, I tried to figure out a way to help my father.
What is a carton of milk? It is a vast combination of resources. If this carton is not kept cold, the milk goes to waste along with all the resources. That's where the cold chain comes in. It's a temperature-controlled supply chain that brings our fresh products to our homes. Reliable cold chains increase the amount of food that makes it from farm to fork, and so are critical to ending world hunger.
Cold storage is not an option due to its costs. It's very expensive, so it's out of reach for most of the people. It does not maintain the freshness, the natural freshness, then sometimes even the nutrients are compromised.
When I asked my dad, would you be open to using a cold room? He said, JP, that's a really nice idea, but it's very expensive. I don't have $100,000 right now. Maybe think of something else. So then I found that there were chemical fungicides. But when I did more research about chemical fungicides, I found out that they have harmful health side effects.
Producing high-quality crops is what every farmer in the world wants. That's why for many decades, farmers have used fungicides to protect their harvest from diseases. However, using the same fungicide repeatedly can lead to the development of populations of resistant fungi. This makes the fungicide less effective, risking the yield and quality of the harvest.
Many solutions have been used in the past to handle the challenge of food wastage, food losses, food spoilage. But unfortunately, most of the solutions have been synthetic. And the synthetic solutions, they have negative effects, not only to the human health, but to the environment, to the soil. So they compromise even the oncoming generation of agricultural produce.
The rise of globalization is what really has caused companies to now think of using synthetics. Synthetics are very affordable and they give you consistent results. Organic solutions are expensive, but at times they don't always give you the consistency that you would get from using synthetics. However, that is changing. And so now I was stuck. What is commonly used is either too expensive or not safe for our health. So I turned back to God, I turned back to nature and asked how is God solving the issue of food spoilage? And when you look into nature, you realize that there's certain fruits and vegetables that last longer than others. So I looked at oranges and noticed that they last longer than avocados. So in my mind I was like, how did God create this produce to actually last longer than the other? I just had thoughts coming into my mind. Why is it shiny? Why is it oily? So I started asking myself those questions. And I realized that oranges are oily because of certain compounds in them. These are what we call glycerides, natural oils that already exist in the peels of all fruits and vegetables.
So the oils in the peel are quite special because what they do, number one, they form a shield. They act like how antibodies act in a human body, meaning they give it strength and vigor to resist spoilage, to resist diseases, to resist pests.
So the idea was, what if I got those oils and then applied them onto the surface of other pieces of produce? So I had to sit down and think about how to extract those oils. And then what would be the most appropriate way that a farmer such as my dad would be able to use them. So I spent time at uni trying to basically do research, spending sleepless nights in the lab. I was able to extract the oils. I told my dad about it and it's like, JP, as a farmer, I would prefer to use a product in its powdered form, not in its liquid form. So I had to think about how to transform the liquid into a powder, and that took quite a number of months. I went back to my dad's farm and told him, hey dad, let me spray your entire garden. He's like, no, I'll give you one bunch of bananas, try it on that, and then let's see how it goes. So I was able to extend the shelf life of my dad's bananas from just a few days to 2 weeks. My dad was super excited. He was like, you need to get the solution into the hands of every single farmer. And I told him, Dad, how do I do that? He's like, start a business. So that was when my entrepreneurial journey started off.
So there are essentially two ways we can look at food scarcity in Africa and think about how to solve it. Number one is we produce more. That might be importing it, which has some difficulties. That might be producing more on the ground, which might have some difficulties. But we could also look at, hey, is there a lot of food that's maybe not making it to the end customer or to a lot of the people that need it? And so in my mind, that's looking at the 100% that you have made and saying, if we lose 20, 30, 40, 50% of that, there could be some innovation that says, hey, we don't necessarily need to produce more. We just need to lose a little bit less.
In Africa, to be precise, 30 to 50% of the food that is produced does not get to the consumer. We're not able to preserve it to get to the consumer in the right way.
As consumers, we don't really realize how big of a challenge food spoilage is, and the fact that it starts all the way from the farm, and there's not much that has been done to solve that issue. And so we've come in to address that. KaFresh is made up of edible oils that we mix with water, and then that water is turned into a spray. which can be misted or sprayed onto the surface of any piece of produce. We've doubled to triple the shelf life of most pieces of produce. An avocado will generally last not longer than a week, but once applied with KaFresh, we've been able to push that to 30 days, even 60 days, close to 60 days at room temperature. For tomatoes, we've been able to push the shelf life from just a week to over 3 months at room temperature. When you look at sweet potatoes, we've been able to push the shelf life from just 2 weeks to 5 months at room temperature.
If you were to say, hey, let's pretend we have 30% crop loss from when it's farmed to actually the end customer. If you could solve half of that, so 15% through the KaFresh product, what's that worth? The answer is probably billions of dollars. They are looking to solve a problem that has a high dollar amount tied to it. And that's good, because what that means is that can compel Western investors to actually bring the capital to the continent where the capital is actually really needed and can do a lot of good.
My dad, he had this heart condition, and I was like, if I'm not going to put vegetable oil, refined vegetable oil in my dad's food, then what's the reason why I should eat food that's grown with like seriously poisonous fertilizer? If I spray anti-aphids in the field, I have to like literally use soap to wash my hand twice or thrice, and I still expect to eat the same tomato. So to me, that became like a turning point.
Very common nowadays to walk into a supermarket, and when you pick a product and check on the ingredients label, you can't pronounce at least 5 of the ingredients. Anything that is good for you should be easy to pronounce.
Working with a lot of farmers around Kenya, most farmers prefer to go the chemical way because it gives them a quick fire way to get into fast yields, fast solution for their current problems.
Unlike the synthetics that you will use today and by tomorrow you're seeing the change very well, the natural products are not always very instant. They require time.
It's a personal experience. That's what was motivating me and driving me. For these big companies, it's all about profit.
KaFresh has really helped farmers reduce costs because it's, number one, it's like very affordable. If you compare to what the farmers generally would use, synthetic products, things like liquid seal and wax, those are like 10 times more expensive than KaFresh. KaFresh has like literally cut down costs by over 90% if I'm to estimate right.
I foresee KaFresh getting all over Africa and beyond, and I look forward to it bringing to an end what we always mention in our country and in our continent: food insecurity, a lack of food safety.
So one of the things that's been so fascinating over the last couple of years here in the States is like politics has a way of like, you know, there's sound bites and there's crazy things, of course, that kind of come up in it. But then there's some issues that suddenly come out of nowhere and just like resonate. Mm-hmm. It's like politics is like a test bed to see what's underneath the surface that people are really thinking and feeling that just suddenly like lurches up. And I think in the States, we've come from this moment where like there's this phrase and it was t-shirts and political slogans of, you know, make America healthy again. And I think what it was like, it was a moment for all of us to realize like, okay, things have gotten really bad. Like the foods we eat, something's here, something's causing something, and we don't know what that something is. But broadly speaking, we've just gotten to this point where we just don't even know what's on the side of the box in the food. I mean, I'm reading some of the sides of the boxes here, and I don't even know what half these things are.
Yeah.
I mean, is it the same here?
It's the same. We are growing in terms of our health awareness. A lot of people are dying because of cancer, and people are trying to understand, how is this cancer coming about? And we are essentially what we eat. So people have started tracing back into the food system to understand at what point are we being exposed to these synthetic or chemical ingredients that are affecting our health. So when you look at the pesticides that farmers are using to spray their produce, that's already an entry point for cancer-causing synthetic ingredients and stuff. And so, yeah, a lot of the products, pesticides are banned.
Yeah.
But they're still being used.
Yeah.
So there's also a systems issue that's at fault.
Yeah. So when you read this side of the box, I mean, do you know what half those things are? I mean, it even sometimes it says like, not even like telling you what they're in. Like they use like some code and some word to kind of like deflect because they're afraid of what we might see.
That's true. Or at times they omit certain ingredients and you won't even know that they're there. Or they'd use certain terms that might seem safe, but actually have a bad impact. Yeah.
So when we begin this journey, and this is a gift for us on this trip, and we're spending the next 2 weeks traveling across 5 different countries in the continent here, just hearing the stories of just kind of how God is at work. And I think oftentimes we think like these great innovations or these things that are happening, like, oh, it must come through some like overly formal process. It must come from like the lab of all labs, the school of all schools. And yet innovation, I think sometimes like comes from like the ground truth and not just kind of removed from like the far off kind of like to the front lines. Can you talk about your journey? Like, how did you get started on kind of like breaking this down with your venture, but also really just kind of discovering what's some of the science behind what you're learning?
So the Bible has a lot of insights on how we should eat and live. And so I was exposed to a number of Bible teachings very early when I was at Uganda Christian University. And one verse that struck with me for a long time was Genesis 1:29, where God instructs us to use plants as a source of meat. And that was very confusing to me at the time. It was like, using plants as a source of meat? We're omnivores. What do you, like, you know? So that was when I got into the whole plant-based science and decided, I'll try and make food products that embody that verse, that embody those teachings, as much as it was in the Old Testament, but there's truth to the Word of God. And when I started delving further, I found myself just, absorbing more and more knowledge, and I realized that we can actually replace a lot of the unhealthy foods we're eating with safer options. And those safer options can actually be affordable. So, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and so this journey starts for you because you come from a community and a place and a family that had been in farming. And most people don't realize, like, when I think of spoilage and I think of what's lost, I mean, the thing I immediately go to is, gosh, we can never keep fresh bananas. I mean, it's like we buy them and like you wake up the next morning, it's like, what happened? That's not just an issue on a consumer level. It really is actually a much bigger issue kind of on the supplier side of things. Tell us the scale of like what we're talking about here.
So when a farmer harvests produce, let's say like today, for instance, he or she will lose over 50%.
50%?
Over 50%.
Wow.
Because of the fact that the people who would come to buy produce from them may not either show up on time or are delayed because of the road infrastructure, the network. And equally because of the tropical climate. It's literally a ticking time bomb. Produce is spoiling because the weather is super hot. So farmers don't really have enough time to offset what they've harvested. And so they just have to watch it go bad. So what option do they have? Produce more food, which is very costly. And they don't necessarily have land which is expanding. So they're kind of stuck in a dilemma.
It's interesting. You oftentimes we talk about this, and I think over the last couple of podcasts, even actually depending upon the order we release these, people may have heard a common trend when we were just in Lagos, like, and people were talking about the need for power and infrastructure. They'd say, oh, well, the quick conversation goes to, we need more generation, more generation. We need more of that. And one of the interesting parts of that conversation was actually there's the waste and there's the billing question and there's like the supply chain that we've got to figure out. It's probably a both and, but we can't just kind of keep going with such a big hole in the boat. And it seems like whether it's energy or it's food, like it's the same issue. Like we've got to solve kind of like this spoilage and this waste piece of the puzzle.
And speaking of Nigeria, one of the largest markets in Lagos called Mile 10, they lose over 90% of the tomatoes that come in.
Oh my goodness.
Most of the tomatoes come from northern Nigeria in a place called Jos or Kaduna State. And so the transportation network from Jos all the way to Lagos is so bad. It's like a 5-day plus drive, you can imagine. Poor road network. So by the time the tomatoes get there, they're mushy. And so, it's really bad. It's really bad. And we definitely need to do something.
Yeah. And so naturally, it feels like, again, we sometimes will take like the solutions of the day or the solutions maybe in another part of the world, and the West, we're guilty of this. So take the West, apply that solution here. And you can quickly say, oh gosh, the solution just must be cold storage. Like we've got to figure that out. But that's both a costly thing.
Absolutely.
But you're also making the point is that might not even actually be the best thing. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, context is very important. And I think from an innovation standpoint, it's very important to discern that certain solutions that work for the West may not necessarily work for Africa. And having a mindset of trying to understand what is the problem from an African perspective. Cold chain infrastructure is expensive. A cold room right now is roughly $100,000. And in addition to that, you have to manage it actively. It's not something that you just set and forget. You have to actively manage it, maintain it. It requires energy. And energy distribution is a challenge in remote parts of Africa. So that cost is one that many farmers are not willing to spend. And so as much as, yes, it might work in the US or in Europe and other countries, Western countries have already built an infrastructure network to accommodate some of those innovations, which make them very affordable. But from an African perspective, there's the lack of infrastructure, which doesn't necessarily support some of those innovations. So we're forced to rethink the entire model from an African perspective and look for solutions that scale within our environment or within our context.
So before we dive deeper into that, I'm a huge history geek, maybe nerd. I don't know what the right word is, but I'm always fascinated how much we can learn just kind of looking back into history. And I think what we're starting to kind of take this conversation into is like, there's no doubt that we can look at food and what we're eating today and say, something's wrong, we don't know what it is. And in some level, maybe good intentions, bad intentions, or some point those intentions or methods changed that flipped it. But really what we're talking about is food preservation and preserving it. And we think that word and it sets off a bunch of like triggers of synthetics and wondering if this, but actually this is something in history that's been, from ancient days kind of throughout. Talk to us about like, where's some of the earliest signs of history of like where you've seen some of the connection between preserving of today and kind of what that looks like and what we see in like the 1800s.
So with reference to the 1800s, there were these monks that used to live in monasteries in Eastern Europe, in countries like Georgia, and they would want to preserve the greatness of apples throughout the winter season, because they normally have very harsh winters, and they just want to enjoy a sweet treat, and apples was like the best source for them, apple pie and all that. So they had to think of solutions to basically do that. And there was a monk who noticed like whenever insects would get covered in, like a candle which is melting, covered in the wax, it would stay in that form for a very long time. So he figured, what if I got that wax and applied it onto the surface of apples, for instance, what would happen? So he tried. basically got beeswax, because that's the wax that they had at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to also produce honey, rare bees and all that, and produce honey. So they figured, why don't we do something with the wax? Monks were very creative. Have always been creative, especially via science and all. So out of necessity, they would get apples and then dip them in these, I would call them like baths of beeswax, molten beeswax, and then they would let them dry. And so they'd form a very thin coating, and that coating would help to preserve the apples. And so they would enjoy apples during the winter season. And that's when the culture of using coatings came in, and the idea of waxing came in. Yeah.
So this has been something for centuries that we've been doing.
Yes.
But somewhere in the process, like maybe the ingredients of that changes. Take us a little bit forward. Like you were talking about, like even we see traces of this in World War I. Like what's some of the points in history where we see this surface in other ways?
Yeah. So during the Soviet, the early days of the USSR and all that, the Russians had to sort of feed their soldiers. And so they had to think of ways of preserving their food. And one of the ways was using things like paraffin wax. Not safe.
No, yeah.
But, they're thinking of how can we ensure that our soldiers are well fed or have some food, rations. So they would sort of dip their food in paraffin wax, and that would extend the shelf life of that. And it was very advantageous to them, especially in remote areas where obviously they didn't have cold storage or access to that kind of technology at that time. So it was. It's coatings have been under development for a long time.
Well, I mean, and I think that gives us a perspective. Like we're facing something that's obviously today we're seeing like the side effects, the damages of this. It's clear, it's undeniable. We don't know what's causing it. It seems like there's a renewed intention to find out why. But some of this is obvious, right? Some of it is, and even when I hear that history reference of like a World War I, is you're talking about people that were saying, okay, I gotta solve a short-term problem. And I haven't really maybe looked at the long-term consequences of it. I think that there's just kind of like this season where we've just kind of gotten more in the lab. And you've even talked about here, even regionally, that there's some challenges of, what was it, concrete or different ways that people are also kind of taking some crazy stances. Tell us about like what some of the other methods people are using.
Yeah, there's some countries in Asia that use concrete to preserve cabbages.
So use concrete to preserve cabbage.
Cement dust, anything to do with construction. Because they contain mostly lime.
Okay.
And lime is a good preserving agent. It dehydrates. It removes moisture. And in so doing, it's able to dry the produce in quotes and allow it to last longer. But the sad thing is when you consume lime, then definitely you'll have some health side effects to it.
Yeah.
And in other countries, like in North Africa, they're using formalin. And formalin is a chemical that's used to preserve dead bodies in mortuaries. It's a biological preserving agent. Even in high school labs, if you've ever seen like a snake that's been preserved in a liquid, that's formalin.
So people are using that.
People are using that
to preserve
oranges, to preserve different kinds of foods.
And I think we have this kind of like misguided thought of like, oh, well, we can take something out, just wash it once, a little bit, splash some water on it, and surely everything's better, right? But that's not the case. So, I think take us in a little bit more back to your journey. Because oftentimes I think, again, in that lab mindset, we always keep trying to find the more complex solution on the other side of complexity. And yet I love this like kind of perspective that you're bringing in and saying, wait a second. We serve a God who's figured a lot of this out. And sometimes we got to start to find that simplicity on that other side of complexity. Tell us about that journey for you.
So God has a way of engineering things to work to our benefit. And he provides everything we need to be successful towards glorifying his name. And in my case, it was basically, I can't say a calling per se, but he chose me to do this work and sort of put the right people and the right resources at my disposal to be able to achieve that. As I was formulating, I was working in a one-bedroom house. I would do side hustles, as we call it here in Africa. Basically small odd jobs here and there to get money, which I would use to buy samples of fruits and vegetables. And then I was able to get in touch with a scientist in Germany who was also working in the line of plant oils and plant ingredients. And he was very inspired by the work I was doing and decided to support me. Not financially, but by providing me access to these rare ingredients, plant-based ingredients. And so he would send me samples, hundreds of kilograms of samples, unimaginable. He's never met me, but he would send me these samples. And
Isn't it fun how God speaks through that?
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And so I would get the samples, I would try things out, and I would end up, extending shelf life of avocados to 30 days. And I was like, this is like a miracle.
Yeah.
Why me? Because most times I'd always question, why me? Why not some other big company? But that's God's plan. He normally takes, the underdogs and brings them.
Yeah, and this is rooted, again, in your family story, and your father's story. And maybe if I were kind of sharing some of like what we talked about in the video story that we'll be producing is like, you're talking about that he grew up and the main crop was bananas, right?
Yeah, not necessarily bananas per se, but he was mostly growing maize, cassava. But bananas was like an extra addition because of the fact that it's equally consumed as a staple in Uganda. And it has a good market value. Unfortunately, the challenges come in the time for purchase, where traders or middlemen have a lot of control. They have a lot of purchasing power. So the leverage is more on their side. And they take advantage of farmers and either come to harvest late, so they're desperate and they're forced to sell at a very low price. So it doesn't favor them from the farmer's end.
So certainly there is a timing. There's an exploitative nature of some of that supply chain, but there's also even if it was timed perfectly. You're also talking about some sensitive fruits and vegetables that don't have much time at all.
Absolutely.
And really need this. I love just kind of your story of just how, again, innovation happens in a one-bedroom place of saying, hey, let's test some things. God's speaking through ways of connections and relationships and conversations. But I think oftentimes we think that, I've got to have this to test it. I've got to have that to test it. I've got to have this perfect environment.
Yes.
But you were talking about the first test. What was it, a tomato?
Yes.
That you were doing it, and you try it. At what point do you day one, day two? What's the day when you're like, hey, wait a second, I think something's happening?
To be honest, every day was like that for quite a number of months. It was pretty intense. I was always waking up and measuring the weight because that was the only way for me to know it was working. And I would notice that it would stay at the same weight for so long. And at first I thought maybe my weighing scale wasn't good because I was just using a basic kitchen weighing scale, nothing fancy, right? And I was wondering, is it the batteries that are not working? But it would maintain that weight for so long. And so what I would do is I would take a picture every single day. I'll take a picture, I'll take a picture, I'll take a picture. And so when I did a collage of all these images, I was able to sort of create a time lapse. And in the time lapse, you could clearly see that, oh my gosh, this is really working. So that's what really gave me motivation to keep checking every single day, because I would do a collage of all those images. And I would see the progression compared to a sample that didn't have KaFresh applied onto it. So give perspectives. The average tomato stays in good shape for how long? Not more than a week. Okay. When you apply KaFresh, you're talking 60 days and beyond. So you're talking about a week to 60 days. Yes. So we're talking about, huge multiples of some of this. So at some point, you hit 60 days, you finally say, okay, enough's enough already. We got to cut this open and see what's going on. Yeah. And when you do cut it open, you notice that the seeds have germinated at times. Wow. Yeah. Because So break down the significance of that. Because some people listening to that, myself included. That's weird. We understand it from a little bit,
but how significant is that?
That essentially means that the tomato assumed that it was still attached onto the mother plant. And that means it's still fresh. That means the flavor is still there. That means the nutrition is still there. And truly the solution is holistic, as opposed to just either solving one key thing, but providing a wholesome benefit. So you know that when you have extended shelf life, but it tastes good flavor, and it's healthy for you to eat. And it's a complete solution.
So run through some of the other fruits and vegetables. Give us some comparison without and what you're seeing with. Just give us some of that perspective.
So back to the bananas I did for my dad, 30 days, room temperature.
Wow. And that's the key too. We can't miss that, right? Is at room temperature.
Room temperature, that means you just leave it outside. You don't have to put it in the fridge. Although, if you do put the produce in the fridge, you have an even extended shelf life. But most importantly, once you take the produce out of the fridge, it still remains fresh for at least a week or two, which can be the case if you don't apply it. We've also done sweet potatoes to 5 months.
Oh, wow.
At room temperature.
And then
normal setup, not more than 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks and you have mold. You just can't eat that sweet potato because it has mold and a lot of gunk on it.
Yeah. So 2 weeks to 5 months. So you're seeing this across this. Bring us a little bit back. And I think this is the kind of the fun part because, we have these conversations with faith-driven entrepreneurs and we talk this language. And in some ways it's meant to kind of catch people's attention because we're all busy and we're bombarded with messages and we're trying to be bold to say, hey, there's really opportunities to solve some of the world's greatest problems. And people look at that and sometimes they say, hey, that's a great t-shirt, great for a website, but that's not real. But it is. And I think that we're seeing examples of that, that some of these great problems of the world can be solved. And yet sometimes God's got the answer kind of right in front of us. And I know that you guys you're in the patent process. You've got some of this, that you're walking through the official process of that. But talk to us about just kind of just the original aha moment of when you're thinking about, oils and how other things are lasting longer. Start to take us kind of what that journey was to say, wait a second, if this is true, maybe this could be true. What was that original kind of, I don't know, thesis or idea that was in the back of your head?
I think it was at the point when I went back to my dad's farm and applied KaFresh on his bananas. And I noticed that from just 2 days, he had 2 weeks extra while they were still green and fit for to be sold in the market. And traders didn't have power over him as they did before. It was almost like they were scared. Oh my goodness. And so the only thing they could turn to is you're using chemicals, but the validation was there. And so for me, that was the turning point. And that's when I realized that, okay, this could actually be something very big and could potentially revolutionize how we are thinking about food spoilage. From going from the traditional way of maybe using cold rooms, but now here it's a solution that is actually scalable, that can be distributed anywhere, and that doesn't require very heavy equipment or machinery or technical knowledge to be used. I mean, everybody has used a spray bottle in their lives for one thing or another. But you can also dip your produce. Dipping is a very common practice on farms. And so it's relying on knowledge that we're already familiar with. Nothing new. Just the way it's solving the problem, which is a bit more novel.
And it's also something that's not new because you're talking about hey, was it oranges that you were looking at first, and you're saying, hey, there's an oil, there's something in the skin, there's something in this that's naturally preserving something longer. How do we just take this thing that is natural and move it over versus some synthetic kind of manufactured somewhere else? Isn't it fun just kind of seeing just kind of the wonder of that, how God just kind of leaves something here and says, hey, I'll let you connect the dots.
Connect the dots, indeed. And that's why I like to use the term God engineering. He literally leaves clues, but you have to have that discernment to be able to see the clues, and you have to put yourself in a state of mind to allow the process, to allow God to take you into that state of mind and thinking. And that's when you start to see all these dots and you try to connect them and it actually works out. When I saw the orange, I mean, it's so shiny, but you have to take time to really understand why is it shiny? Then you check the peel and then you realize, wait, what is on the peel? What kind of oils? And there's so many different types there were 50 different types of oils. And even within the oils, there are different types of classes of oils. Not all oils are the same. So then you have to distinguish, okay, which oils would actually benefit in preservation? Or which combination of oils would benefit? Because it's not just one oil that does it all. The way God works is he's wholesome in his creation. He can't just give you one solution. It's a combination of very many things coming together. That's how complex he is. Complex in his creation. So in this, now I had to figure like, okay, if I join all these kind of oils, what would I get? And when you do the different formulations, different combinations, you realize that you're getting different results. In others, you're accelerating the spoilage. In others, you're extending the shelf life. In others, nothing's happening. So it's all these different formulations that you have to sort of put together. But in all, at the end, there's it's like a jigsaw. You're connecting all those to form a picture. And when you have the right combination, then you have a complete picture. And that's when you have the greatest shelf extension.
Beautiful to see kind of what you're laying out here. Good friends Dave and Andy and the team at Praxis, they kind of have this framework, and that people have heard on this podcast often is this idea of like, how do we look at things that are exploitative? And then there's that step of, okay, how do you move to ethical? And then there's this redemptive, and you're seeing this play out just not only as you're creating, but like what you just talked about is like there were farmers that were being exploited, being taken advantage of. The leverage was being used against. And now that's changing. Talk about the significance for people when they think about countries. And specifically, it sounds like you spend most time in, like, at least today, in Kenya and Uganda. Just talk about both the amount of farmers that this impacts, the significance of it. Because I think people hear smallholder farmer and they just don't even know what that means. Like, give perspective of like, what is a family like that going through, and how many people in a country are in the agricultural space?
Very, very good question. So in Uganda, we have over 2 million farmers. And these farmers are literally the backbone of the country. They feed the country. And so they need their appropriate tools to be able to do so consistently. Many of them have very fragmented land. And so it's forced them to be very creative in how they farm. And so preservation solutions that allow them to amplify that creativity and improve their livelihoods is very necessary. And so a solution like KaFresh sort of removes the invisible tax that is food spoilage, and basically allows them now to grow produce and send it to regions of the country where it's not present. So if it's not present for like weather challenge reasons, then they can offset that by sending mangoes, for instance, in a region that doesn't have mangoes. It means that community can benefit from the nutrition that can be derived from the mangoes, thanks to a solution like KaFresh, which increases the addressable market. If your addressable market was just a day, you have a month to figure out where to take your produce.
Wow.
Even if the roads are poor, you still have enough time. Once the produce reaches the consumer, he or she still has more time. So that pressure is relieved because of solutions such as KaFresh. And what that means is more income across every single actor in the value chain. The farmer benefits because now he doesn't have to harvest under pressure. He has a better market. The trader who's buying from him or her isn't under pressure because they have a larger addressable market. And then the market vendors equally who buy from the traders are not worried about selling produce that will go bad. So they can sell their produce at a very fair price to consumers. And when the consumers pick from the market vendors, they're not under pressure, so they can buy in bulk, which is cheaper. Because when you buy in bulk, you spend less. But because you know your produce will last long, You're not worried. And power is a challenge in Africa. So even with poor energy infrastructure, you're not worried because you can keep your produce at room temperature. So that alleviates pressure along the entire agriculture value chain.
Yeah.
And that means farmers can take their children to school. They have more consistent income. They don't have to grow produce on a very large acreage of land and focus it more on high value crops because they now have a solution that can preserve their produce.
Yeah.
So it's a whole mindset shift just thanks to this.
It really is.
Solution.
It's fascinating how so much of this is a mindset shift. You know, when you talk about 2 million farmers, you talk about that being the backbone of a country right now, of like Uganda. I think that we miss the significance that, at least I might, as an American lens looking at this, but it's like the equivalent of saying like, hey, small business owners in America are the backbone of our country. And if you could create something that could, you know, preserve, you know, their inventory, you know, I don't know, 5, 6, 7-fold. Like you're talking like one of like the biggest breakthroughs, like the exponential opportunity that what that could do for a country. It's significant. And when I think about that through a small business owner in the States, there's something maybe closer to my everyday that I might touch and feel. And then you recognize of what that can do here, just everything of what you said. It really is amazing to think of like what kind of shifts that can make kind of in a society, and just saying, okay, the flourishing opportunities, everything up and down the value chain. But also I think oftentimes we've thought the healthier option, gosh, it tastes better. I know it looks better. I know, but it's more expensive, or it's more this and it's more that. But I think what you're talking about is something like this. All of a sudden, if waste is reduced so significantly, there's an economic change to the formula where the healthier options become even more accessible options. Not just in places of scarcity, you're talking about meeting scarcity. In places of abundance, and people are choosing the cheap synthetic versus the natural and the organic, that also has a positive effect there. You're really seeing it just kind of across so many of those different pieces. Where are the pieces that you're stuck? Where are the pieces, the challenges? What's been kind of those next season for you? I know it's been a time of growth. I know it's been a time of investors and partners and other people kind of like building the team for the next season. What's the next stage look like?
The next stage is, you know, as much as we started off as a food preservation company, we're now moving more into a biotech platform, an agricultural biotech company that's solving challenges along the agriculture value chain. So we recently launched a solution called GrowFresh, which is based off of KaFresh, but it helps to accelerate the germination of seeds. And so we're now starting to walk the journey with the farmer. So it's like the inverse.
Yeah.
We're at the end now. We're also at the beginning of the entire process. And with GrowFresh, basically, a farmer is able to germinate like their rice 2 weeks ahead of time. So if you planted rice today, your rice would germinate 2 weeks ahead of someone who hasn't used GrowFresh.
Wow. And is it a similar process? Is it because of not using synthetic, but using like a typical natural solution? What does that look like?
The oils in KaFresh are able to prepare the seed for germination in a way that no other product can or material can. And so we're realizing that KaFresh as a base can work in so many different applications. And we also want to move in the pesticide space, applying the same level of disruption in the pesticide space, and not necessarily killing the insects, but making them invisible to produce.
Making them invisible to produce.
So if they can't see the produce in the first place, then how are they going to cause damage? So it's a totally different way of thinking about the problem. Instead of attacking them, make them not able to actually see the produce that they're going to attack.
Wow.
And so that means they'll starve naturally if they can't see their food, their targeted food.
Yeah. So much of this, like as we come back to it, it is a mindset shift, right? It's like how we see the problem. What are the advantages that you have here, just kind of being so much what we come back to this conversation often when we talk about Africa. It's just, entrepreneurs are not only having to, build the thing, but they're having to build the infrastructure to support the thing. You're able to kind of just think differently. What is that mindset like? Like, take us into that.
Being able to hear the farmer telling you that I want a product that is in powdered form is very important, because it allows you not to innovate in the wrong direction or to force a solution onto people. So we're able to get clear insights on their needs, their challenges, and that also allows us to make changes where necessary. If they tell us that we want a solution that can be easily dipped, then we have to go back to the drawing table and figure out how to do that. If they tell us that maybe can it work over a larger volume of produce, we go back and do that. So like a liter of KaFresh, you can preserve 50 to 100 kgs of produce. And it wasn't the case in the beginning. You weren't able to preserve that much. But over time, we learned how to improve on our formulations to get to that point. And so that means we're innovating with the farmer. It is quite challenging. There are things farmers want us to do that are
sure.
equally.
It sounds like you've got a lot on your plate already.
Yeah, so it's like, okay,
yeah,
we know you want this, but today in 2025, this is what we can provide. We still need more time. And obviously now with AI coming in, it's also adding a lot of value.
So how does AI add value to farming?
It doesn't add value to farming directly. How it works is AI is like an enzyme. It catalyzes or accelerates what's already existing and allows it to work more effectively. So in our case, we have a product, KaFresh. If we want to combine AI, which we're doing, then we're able to identify which type of avocados would benefit from our product or not. Is there really a need to add KaFresh to an avocado that's going to get rotten in a day? Not necessarily. That could be used to process oil. The avocado could be turned into oil instead of being put on a truck and loaded for 3-5 hours.
Yeah.
So that minimizes wastage even further. So that's how the advent of AI comes in, as an enzyme to catalyze what we already have and allows us to make better decisions, which ultimately allows the value chain to benefit. Yeah.
So as we come to a close here, just how is God speaking to you through this? How does he speak to you through this journey? Like where do you see God show up most?
God allowed me to work with some of the most amazing people, my teammates, my colleagues. I think you interviewed Lois, you interviewed Frank.
Yeah.
And they're really amazing people. At times they question me a lot.
Sure.
GP, this is not okay.
Yeah.
So it's fun to I'm very privileged and honored to have them, to have people like them, because they provide guidance, they provide insights, and you can't walk a journey alone. You need people. You need talented people, but you also need people who believe in God as well and can guide you in the right direction. It makes a whole lot of a difference.
Isn't it amazing, like how you see God's, like we know Scripture, we spend time in Scripture, we're immersed in Scripture, and yet we also see God speak through people. Like how it's fun how he speaks through people and I don't know, connections and conversations with, it's people in Germany, as you say, that you're not supposed to have this conversation, or an investor that you never knew existed, that all of a sudden that you connect with. It's kind of almost like this, like, I don't know, childlike wonder of like putting the first puzzle together.
Absolutely.
And you're like, wow, these pieces actually do fit. And I would never have thought of that.
Absolutely.
What a gift to be with you. It's such an encouragement to see the way that God has equipped you, the way that God has placed you in the season, the way that through your family's journey, through your family story, and then out of that, there's this journey to create, to say, okay, how do I not just help a family, a community, but really just so many more people to think differently about it. And I think that's one of the things that just really strikes me about this is there's a technology to anything. And I think any good entrepreneurial journey, there's some innovation, But so much of this is like just helping people to see differently, whether that's how we tell stories and how we communicate, whether it's the farmers, whether it's the customers. It's a big effort to help people see differently. And I think one of the most powerful ways that we can do that is stories, and stories like yours. So grateful for you sharing that with us, your journey, and just the faithful way that God has you on that. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story and to allow my teammates to also have a chance to share their experience as well.
So friends, thank you so much for being with us. It has been a treat for us here these last couple of days to be traveling across the continent and seeing the beauty and the diversity of Africa and the 5 different countries that we're visiting. And one of the things that I'm just struck by is that entrepreneurs truly do have the power to solve some of the world's greatest problems. But when you do, it's often best to do that in a team where investors and entrepreneurs and ministry leaders and community leaders and everybody are all coming together to do more together than we might otherwise do apart. And that language, solving the world's greatest problems, it's a part of the faith-driven family. It's a part of a conversation that we've had, both on a website where we capture stories and content meant to encourage and to inspire, but we don't want it just to be some hype or pep rally that gets us excited, but we also want to give tangible ways to take action. And that might be ways to take action is a family, or maybe through your business. And some of the ways that you can do that is thinking ways that you might give or invest differently to seed some of these great problem-solving solutions and help some of these things accelerate. So I want to encourage you, check out the Solving the World's Greatest Problems website. Find the problem that you feel called to. Find that wrong that maybe your family wants to be a part of helping make right. And whether it's learning about it or taking action and finding ways that you could maybe join a collaborative giving circle or giving fund where faith-driven entrepreneurs and investors are coming together to say, if we pool our resources and give and invest together, maybe we can make a greater impact. Maybe there are some things that we might not have access to on our own that we can together. So check that out. Find ways to get involved. Let us not be marked as Christians as people that just talk and think different, but that we might also pair that with acting different. It's a gift to be with you as always, and we will look forward to seeing you on next week's episode.
Come for content, stay for community. Join a faith-driven entrepreneur group online or in person. No cost, no catch. Visit faithdrivenentrepreneur.org. That's faithdrivenentrepreneur.org.